Pilate asked Jesus, what is truth? It's a question that we must be able to answer. Now, philosophers thought about it, spoke about it. Aristotle said, and you have to embrace this one, to say of what is that is not, or what is not that is false. While to say of what is that is, it is, and of what is not that is not, is true. That's the definition of truth. So let's simple this down. So what is truth? It corresponds to reality. John said this. So, as a mother, if I walk into the kitchen and there's a cookie jar, and I see the cookie jar was full, and now all of a sudden it's half, and I see all the crumbs, and I walk to my 3 children's rooms, and I walk into my first-year student's room, and it's crumbs and wrappers and whatnot more everywhere, and I'm like, who ate the cookies? And he's like, not me. And I'm like, so why are the crumbs on your face? Why are they leading all the way to your room? I have looked at the evidence and I made a judgment to say the truth corresponds to the reality. The cookie jar is less and the crumbs reflect that it is you. So, truth in summary. No PowerPoint. Okay? I want you to see that truth is discovered and not invented. So if we look at the earth, in science way back, they said the earth is round, is flat. So was that true? No. What they have known at that given time, drawn the conclusion that the earth is flat. But it's discovered that, hey, it is actually round. So truth did not change. It is the discovery of what is corresponding with reality that has. Truth is transcultural. It is for all people in all places and all times. So for us sitting here, it's relevant to all of us, no matter where you come from, no matter what your culture is saying. And we spoke about this, and we spoke about marriage, and I'm going to emphasize marriage today. And if we have a look at that, it doesn't matter what culture you're in. Marriage is an institution set in by God. So how we ask if I may marry is la bola and sam, and in the Western culture is you must present me with a diamond. I don't see that in the Bible. It's a cultural expectation, but that doesn't mean it's true. It's cultural. And today we see that the culture influences us where it should be the other way around. Our knowing of the truth should influence our cultures, and we should walk according to that. So truth is unchanging. Earth has always been round. It didn't change. So when my belief change, and when I have reality and I have the truth, then I know, okay, the truth is the same. My behavior changed because the truth stayed. It is the knowing that has changed. Truth is unaffected by attitude. If I like the fact that I'm a woman, or if I dislike the fact that I'm a woman, doesn't change the fact I'm a woman. I am female. You can't change that. If I am being used and abused, and therefore I want to wear clothes and say, don't ever, or I want to gain weight in extreme measures to say, you will never desire me again, doesn't change the fact that I've been created female. Truth is not affected by my attitude. Truth is absolute and exclusive, meaning it cannot be true for you and not true for me. It is absolute. Opposite of true is false. So if I make a claim and I say it's true, whatever else contradicts that is false. So we're going to have a look at pluralism. We cannot say that all of religion's gods are the same. There's just one God that is true. The others can't be because they contradict one another. One is true and one is false. Truth cannot be escaped. Please don't tell your children this, but if you want to test this, you can stand on this ceiling, on this wall, and then jump off and see if gravity is true or not. We cannot see gravity, and it is still true. I cannot escape it. I don't believe in gravity, therefore I'm going to jump off. No, you have to believe it because truth corresponds to reality. You have to use it to deny it. So if I say truth does not exist, it's a truth statement that I'm making, so I have to use truth to actually deny that truth is existing. So truth corresponds to the reality. Now we get self-defeating statements. People say, there is no truth. That statement is a truth statement. So you say, is that true to you? Your truth is your perception. So is your perception true and mine not? Is it arrogant? It's arrogant to claim that you know truth. Are you being arrogant now or not? All truth claims are power plays. Are you trying to do a power play on me? I only believe what science can prove. Please use biology or maths or any scientific formula to prove your statement that you have just made to me. Show me. How can you prove your truth statement? I only believe what science can prove. Contradicts defeating statements. Now, we all demand absolute truth. If you go home and you lock your door or you put your alarm system on, you want to believe that that security system that you have paid for and they have sold you is really going to work as they said it will work. If you take your money and you put it in the bank in a savings account, you want to believe the truth that they said that's the interest you're going to get. And if you put your bank card in the machine, you can withdraw your money. We want absolute truth. Medicine. If I go to the doctor and he says, I have got a tumor on my brain and they have to operate, I want to believe that that's an absolute truth statement he's making and say, yes, okay, you operate on my brain. I remember in the UK, all three of my children are born in London, and there you don't have a choice on the NHS medical system. It's just you a number, you have your card and you go, and you don't know who's doing your labour or how you're going to give labour neither. And I remember with Sophia, I had a really traumatic experience with Yuvan, my first, and then with Sophia, all I knew is I cannot give natural labour. I cannot give birth naturally. And so they wanted me to do a VBAC. It's a cesarean after, a normal birth after a cesarean. And I just had this, I really tried. I wanted to. I wanted to. I've realized after 2 days, I cannot, and we almost lost my baby. So I'm like, I want a cesarean, please. We have to do a cesarean. My babies were 4.5 kilos and 4.3 kilos. So at that stage, the anaesthetist was a trainee anaesthetist. They said, okay, if you're so adamant that you must have a second cesarean, we're going to give you a trainee doctor, so a student. And then they had to put a drip on my hand as I sat there in theatre. And I don't know if you can see, but you can actually see my veins. And he couldn't put a drip in my hand or in my arm, on my next arm. And I looked at my husband and I could feel how I'm going to faint, because in my mind I'm like, I need to trust that you're going to put a needle in my spine now and then make me to not feel the cesarean. I need to trust, truly know that you can do this. And I'm like, I knew that the truth is you can't put a needle in here. How are you going to put a needle in my back? We as society demand absolute truth when we listen to doctors and their advice as well. Relationships. I demand truth that my husband is saying, I promise before God and the congregation that I will be faithful to you. We demand that what you are saying is true, that it will correspond to reality, that you will behave according to what you have promised. We demand it in court proceedings. That's what's happening in our country now. We say your statement that you are making correlates with the truth, and therefore we don't like what our justice system is doing at this stage, because, come on, are you looking after all of us? All of us. It's not just black lives that matter, but it's all of our lives that matter. So court proceedings, we want absolute truth. So Everyone really believes in absolute truth, even if we want to deny it. So, can we know the truth? Yes. Jesus said in John 1:14, verse 6, he said, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Now, counterfeit art, we have been created. Okay, so if we have a look at art, how is the counterfeit art piece detected? Why do you get a print of Van Gogh, I don't know how to say it in Van Gogh, Starry Night? If you have a look, a print is $10. That is around about 195 rands. But the actual piece is $111 million. It's 2.16 billion rands. Now, what is the difference in their value? If we have a look, it is that the truth corresponds to the reality. The actual piece of work is not the work, it is in who has done, the artist and who's done this. A print work is a machine that's printed, and we can print many, and therefore the value of it is. The value and dignity of humanity can be determined by who have created them. Now, the opposition is saying, no, there's no God, so there's no worth, there's no value in humanity. Let's have a look. So the truth must correspond to the reality. Next slide, please. Reason demands truth. If we think about it, we use our brains and process this, there must be a demand. We want the truth to come out of this. And yes, last night I said, the unexamined life is not worth living for. Socrates said this, and I add, the unexamined faith is not worth believing, or last night I finished, not worth dying for. So, all people hold to a certain set of beliefs, and each one of us live according to what we believe. So if we believe that we are just a piece of printing, no value, dignity, and worth, we behave accordingly. If we believe that we are a piece of artwork that is worth so much because we have been created by the God Almighty that spoke into existence the heavens and the earth and everything of that, then we're going to behave completely different accordingly again. So truth, reason demands truth. So we can be influenced by heresies and pressure and friends and family, cultural norms, politics and so forth. But it can be based not on truth, but on lies. So our culture can say, you can only marry my daughter if you show me your bank statement, or you show a lobola of such a high level that is like, I will never be able to marry this woman, and I love her dearly, and we want to love one another, embrace, and in that worship God and have children in a family. So what do? We don't marry and we live in sin. Because we can't keep to the cultural norms. So we live according to the cultural norms and not the godly truth said. Now, so what does the people do? Their culture must adapt, or they must adapt to their cultural norms, so they would like to disprove God, because then they feel better, because now I can live in sin, because really there's not really a God, and this norm that is true, I cannot keep to, so I'm rather just going to behave immoral and then give a reason because God does not exist. So, living in sin, rather than changing our behavior according to the truth and living there, not to please the culture or the expectations of our culture, but to please God. So, the next slide, 2 views. We have a purpose, but our purpose are influenced by what belief system, what truth we stand on. So what is humanity's purpose? There's a functional definition of humanity, and I'm going to explain this. We can suppose that we are worthy by what we are doing. Okay? So if I have a look there, you see a spoon and you see a set of rings. The spoon has got a function. I take a spoon and I eat with it. a ring has got a function, it's to make you look pretty. So it is defined, a spoon is a spoon because of its function, what it does. So if you have a look at the material used to make that spoon, on the left-hand side, that's not a spoon yet. It cannot function as a spoon. On the left-hand side is gold. It doesn't function yet as a ring, so it's not pretty yet. Now, the non-believers are saying that you are only worthy if you function in a certain way. So if you're already a spoon or already a ring, then you are worthy. And it says that your function, by doing what you think makes you happy and successful and rich and sexually fulfilled and comfortable, and whatever you get and whatever you desire, so your inclinations, your desires, your emotions determine your actions. But it's not. The spoon, yes. So how the spoon functions determines how good it functions and its worth. But that's not the same for humanity. Humanity is different. We are not just valuable because of how we function. Our value is worth and dignity is not in what we do. No. And what we do is determined by our Creator. So how does this look? Nancy Pearcey has written a book, Love Thy Body, and if you read that, that's exactly the outplay of this is in our culture. So if you look at a baby, for example, so where you see the spoon in the ring, if you put another picture in the bottom of that, and it is a baby, it certainly doesn't have a function yet, okay? And therefore, if it's defined by a cultural norm that says you feel your worth is only in how you function, a baby has no worth. Because how does it function? It is drinking, it's sleeping, it's pooing. Really? Okay? Now, theologians says that a baby is worthy because it does have a soul, not because of how it functions. There's a metaphysical aspect of this. So metaphysical, it's a philosophical term. It is the study of the form and matter. So how a baby is formed and his existence determines his worth and value. So let's go back. A baby, a fetus, two cells combined, grow, life instantly growing. Before it's born, it already has worth, dignity, and value. If we have a look at gold, my husband works in the DRC on a mine, and it's a copper mine, and you see all these trucks, and you see these like bags of powder that they are conveying. My husband will say, $50,000, $50,000, $50,000, and you look at this bag, and it's like, it's a bag, man. What's the worth? Why does it have value? Because gold and metal has worth before it's made into anything. Why do we have an attitude that the truth is that a baby, before it's born and it doesn't function yet, or when it's born now, yes, in America they are talking about you are legally have the right to kill your baby up to the age of 2 now. Simon, help me. They are talking about these things. Why? Because it's not functioning yet as a certain belief demands of them. Okay, breathe. Suzette, what are you talking? Truth corresponds to reality. We need to go back to say, okay, pro-abortion has a functional view of the human nature. Humans are humans only by function. If we say a fetus is a human to non-Christians, it is like saying the undefined piece of metal, as on the left, is a spoon. We need to make unbelievers understand it's not its function that makes it a human being, but it is its essence. If we succeed in them understanding that a lot of them would consider being pro-life. Many people see religion just as something we do, as if religion only has a function like a hobby. Sometimes to keep us busy, with and makes us feel good. That's not why we study. I say, I don't know the programs happening on TV because I don't watch TV. And if I watch something, it's this. I'm like, okay, Lord, how do you respond to this? What is happening in the news? Because I want to be able to. It is not that I just sit and watch. And even that, you may watch movies. And in that, discern what is true and what lies are being told to you. So what are you keeping yourself busy? Is religion just a hobby? Now, if we say our worth is in how we function, then the current cultures that we live in is you function just, men, to satisfy your lustful desires. Women, your worth is only in how you can be used and abused to satisfy men's lust and desires, and vice versa. Because your function is just to procreate, and you're just matter, and there's no right and wrong. That's the truth? No, it's not. It does not correspond to reality. So what are the cultural waves and errors then? Man is the center of the universe. You decide your desires. You decide what's right and wrong. Or there's no right and wrong. Science explains everything. Biology has nothing to do with sex. We can't know anything. Oh, wow. All authority is bad. No mother or the mother should decide the fate of an unborn child as it's not really functioning yet. Material possessions bring happiness. There is no God. Jesus is a myth. And why does that leave us? Absolutely no hope. No purpose. No dignity. No worth. So, here's the example. We see this. So what is truth? It must correspond to reality. There's a myth, a popular analogy that's being used, and I'm going to read it to you. A group of blind men heard that a strange animal called an elephant had been brought to the town, but none of them were aware of the shape and form. Out of curiosity, they said, "We must inspect and know it by touch, of which we are capable." So they sought it out, and when they found it, they grabbed it about it. In the case of the first person whose hand landed on the trunk said, "This being is like a thick snake." For another one whose hand reached the ear, it seemed like a kind of fan. As for another person whose hand was upon its leg, said, "The elephant is a pillar like a tree trunk." The blind man who places his hand upon it said, "Elephant is a wall." Another one who felt its tail described it as a rope. The last felt its tusks, stating the elephant is that which is hard, smooth, and like a spear. So these blind men have never encountered an elephant and seek to understand and describe this phenomenon. According to the religious pluralism, this is exactly what they say, is that what I see and touch and feel, or not, I can't see, I'm blind, I'm just using some of my senses, then I draw a conclusion and I say it's a rope or it's a fan and so forth. Now, if we look at the individual religions, this is not true because it doesn't correspond to the reality, because the reality is, the absolute truth is, the next slide, is this is an elephant. If another person arrives with his eyes open, he's like, "No, you are touching the tail of an elephant. Look at the whole picture," because the whole picture communicates that it's an elephant. Okay, so what is the true story in what corresponds to reality? In John 18:37, then Pilate said to him, he asked Jesus, "What is true? So are you a king?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. For this purpose I was born, and for this purpose I have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth. Anyone who is of the truth listens to my voice." So if we want to seek what is true, we go to Jesus because he's the truth. And then if he witnessed to the truth, it corresponds to everything that is real. And then if we listen, we will listen to his voice. Last night I've shown you the framework of the gospel, and I'm going to repeat that so that you have it. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth and everything on it, and man and woman in his image. And there was a fall that brought a divide between Christ or God and his people. We see the impact of the fall. But for God so loved the world, and he gave Jesus. And we have hope. there's truth and we have hope. It's not just that we are matter with no purpose other than procreation. So, if we have a look at this, we can go and say, okay, if truths correspond to reality, does Jesus' life, death, and resurrection correspond to reality? So let's read. John mentioned this, 1 Corinthians 15, verse 3 to 8. And it says, "For I delivered to you as of first importance what I also received, that Christ died for our sins in accordance with the Scriptures, that he was buried, that he was raised on the third day in accordance with Scriptures, and that he appeared to Cephas, then to the 12, then he appeared to more than 500 brothers at one time, most of them who are still alive, though some have fallen asleep. Then appeared to James, then to all the apostles. Last of all, as to one untimely born, he appeared to me also." This is Paul that I told you about last night. Truth statements. Christ died. How do we know it's true? It corresponds to reality according to Scriptures. This is historical books, not just the Bible. Second one, sin, accordance with the Scriptures. That he was buried, accordance with the Scriptures. That he was raised, accordance with Scriptures. And then he appeared to Cephas, the 12, more than 500 people. This is eyewitness accounts. People saw it. They witnessed to it. They could tell of it. He appeared also to Paul. Now, last night, I said to you, Paul, going through all those pain, all those thorns and thistles, all that persecution, that heartache. Remember, he was a Jew, a trained Jew, scholared in Jewish myths. He had to walk away from his family. They said, "You are now part of a sect that we are busy killing, so we have nothing to do with you anymore." And the Christians were like, "May we trust Paul? He was actually killing us." He was the one that gave instruction for Stephen to be stoned. And Stephen prayed and said, "Lord, please forgive him because he doesn't know what he's done." And God answered Stephen's prayer on his deathbed, on his death stone heap. And he had an encounter with Jesus. And here we see that Paul knew that he met Jesus, and therefore he would face suffering because it corresponds with reality. So what is truth? Next one. John 8:32 says, Jesus said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." Cultural philosophies influencing us cause us to believe lies. I believed lies. On the left-hand side, you see a photo. That's my current ID photo. Okay? I believed lies. No, I did not think, I want to be a partaker of demonic activity. That's not what happened there. I believed lies. I believe that my worth and dignity is in what the world expects me to be, just an object of use and abuse. I believed that I have no worth other than to keep a man satisfied in his sexual desires. That's where I was. But then, in Acts 26:18, we see where Paul writes and he says, Luke, and he says, "To open their eyes so that they may turn from darkness to light and from the power of Satan to God, that they may receive forgiveness of sins and a place among those who are sanctified by faith in me." I received forgiveness. I received a freedom from a thinking that was stinking. I've learned and I've read God's word, and I saw that my Creator, the God of this universe, loves me and says, "I have created you and you are worthy. And therefore your worth is not in your function, your worth is in who I say you are." And for that reason, whatever stronghold, because of the lies that I believe, I was redeemed from. I received forgiveness. And you can see the external change was done based on what God has done in my heart, the circumcision of my heart, and the worth and the dignity, and therefore I can walk not in pride, but in humility, knowing what God has done. So if you go back to the theme, discipling, God in Matthew 28:18-20, and Jesus came and said to them, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age." Love God and love your neighbors. After I have been set free from sin, and I have received grace and mercy and forgiveness, my heart's desire is to go and share this truth with others, that they can be set free, and they can be moved, and they can behave according to their worth and dignity based on the truth of who Jesus Christ is. And that is making disciples, actively seeking, loving. The definition of love is actively seeking the best for the other and doing it. So if I want to love God and therefore love those nearest and dearest to me, I must go and have a look. How can I love my husband? What is the best for him? No, it is not giving into my children's demands of, we must have, you mother should. It's not. Sometimes it means no. Loving others is actively seeking the best. So, in our cultural norms, we are exposed to all these lies. So, if you say, "You're not loving and kind to me if you don't agree with my philosophy," I'm like, "I am loving you, that's why I'm disagreeing." If I say, "Well done, that's the right way to go, I bless you." We have a family member that is in a gay relationship, dear family, very close. And the family say, "You must love him, you must love him." I'm like, "I do. That's why I can't say, 'Bless you, well done, I may God really bless you.'" And my children ask the question, "Mom, if they prosper, is that God blessing them?" I want to say no. If they prosper, it is a limited, materialistic, it's a worldview of their function that looks like they are doing well, but their souls is damaged and broken and hurt. We need to share and disciple. So, what is discipleship? The intentional process of learning and living out the teachings of Jesus Christ. I must be intentional. I must be intentional waking up in the morning is, how am I going to love my husband? How am I going to love my children? And how am I going to teach them and live in a way that causes them to see Jesus Christ? And this is characterized by faith, virtue, and obedience, designed to guide others to do the same. I remember my cousin, we were in London, and she came to stay with us for a year. She's a qualified had a degree, optometrist, and she stayed with us, and the only job she could get was working as a receptionist in an optometrist. And part of her job description was that she had to clean afterwards, clean the floor, clean the toilets and everything. And then on the way, she traveled more than an hour, had to work the whole day with her degree. She could do the work that the optometrist is doing, but she's the receptionist and cleaner. And then on the way back, she will stop at church and do a program and a training there, and then come home like 10 o'clock at night, and I would look at her and she will share, "You know what?" And she's so excited. And I looked at her and I thought, I say I'm a Christian, but I don't have what you have. I knew that the way that she was living in obedience and what she's been sharing, I don't have what she has. So, what is discipleship? It's spirit-led growth of people. Your teaching, your living, how you teach others and them to live is then spirit-led, and you can see people grow. Intellectual and practical. So you must understand that teaching is, we need to think and brain and change our thinking. And then we have to contemplate this, but this is practical. There's an outflow of this. But I want you to see that it is a process. Now, all that I'm talking about, discipleship, is Dr. Thomas McCuddy. He has worked on virtues discipleship. He's got material. I spoke to him last night. My laptop didn't work last night, so I wanted to add more. But I spoke to him. He's got access to material, and you're welcome. You can send us an email, and he said he will send me a QR code. I couldn't put in the QR code and so forth. So what we'll do is, if you want more training with regards to what I said, there is more material. He's even willing to come and teach you as well. So he often comes he's coming to South Africa again. So discipleship. There's a difference between discipleship and if I say learning, there's a difference between what we do at school in the academic form and discipleship learning. And this process, there's a difference because it's living out the teachings of Jesus. So the objections, if you teach, you want to say, this is the objection of my lesson and this is what I want you to do at the end of it. At the end of discipleship, you want people to live out what they've learned about Jesus. And the emphasis is on faith, virtue, and obedience. So Christian discipleship, it requires faith, making it distinctly Christian. I cannot say I'm discipling you if I don't believe in the truth of who Jesus Christ is, His Word, and God the Father. Then, and the Holy Spirit. Let me just clarify, there's the triune God. Then Christian discipleship is with regards to virtue, which makes it distinctly transformative. So virtue, I'm going to define for you just now. It is that you have to live to moral excellence. Not perfection. I want you to see this. It's excellence. And then also obedience, which is aligned with the proclaimed will of Christ. So if I'm a disciple, my objection, why I move, is that I have faith in Christ. I want to behave godly and with moral excellence, and therefore I'm going to respond to the guidance in obedience. And that's being a disciple, but then also encouraging and teaching others to have faith, live in a godly way, and then respond in obedience. So in 2 Peter 1 verse 5, we read of virtue where it says, for this reason, make every effort to supplement your faith with virtue and virtue with knowledge. So what is virtue? A virtuous person is a good person. Now, at first, when I read that, I said to John, he doesn't like that. Because I find people say they are Christians with their mouth. I don't see the fruit. And then when they go through suffering, they're like, why would God allow this? Because I'm actually a good person. And I want to say, no, we're not. We're not good persons. But if you live according to a godly lifestyle, godly principles, in obedience to Christ, then you are a good person. Not just morally, but existentially, so that how I exist is according to my design. So if I exist according to the world's principles, I'm just matter and I can decide what's right or wrong. If I live according to God's design, I'm created in His image. I'm a child of the only living God, and therefore I behave accordingly. So virtue is the quality of soul that corresponds with God's intention for us. He had a purpose for us. My soul is in line with that, and I behave accordingly. Vices is the opposite of virtue, and that deforms the soul. It hinders us from living as fully human. It makes us less than we are meant to be. So these vices aren't necessarily sin. Definitely sin as well, but it can be habits that's not in line with God's will. And while virtue restores what was lost, vices make sure that we go into that death and desolation that I spoke about last night. So let's have a look. A virtuous person is a good person. Oh, I said that. Now we get theological virtues on the next slide. Theological virtues are faith, hope, and love. We read of that in 1 Corinthians 13:13. So now, faith, hope, and love abide, these three, but the greatest of these is love. So virtue is to go have faith, have hope, and then have love for one another and also live accordingly. But then we get cardinal virtues as well, and we read of that in Ephesians 4, verse 1-3. I therefore, prisoner of the Lord, urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. So I've highlighted a few of those terminologies, and here Dr. McCuddy has put it on a table. So the cardinal virtues is the next slide. Is prudence. So prudence is the knowledge that we have. And we have a knowledge, and therefore we are aiming and maintaining a unity. Jesus came to save us and to unite all creation back to God. So because we can now be in a relationship with God, that is prudence. But the virtue, your change of behavior, comes with the knowledge and the understanding. Temperance is self-control, where he says there, humility. Okay, next one, but it's fine. I trust that they will get it. There we go. So temperance is self-control. So if I behave as a Christian with self-control, it's humility. If I behave with prideful, I do what I think is right and what I want, and I'm going to demand it over everyone else. We find that. How do you dare drive in front of me? Why not? Who are you? Humility. Fortitude is steadfastness, patience, bearing with one another, bearing with our afflictions, bearing with it. That is a virtue. Justice towards God is godliness and behaving, walk in a manner worthy of who God is, your creator, and in the worth and dignity that you are. And then justice towards people is that brotherly affection, is bearing with one another. That is virtuous living. Now, why do I say virtuous discipleship? Is as a disciple, I must walk in those theological virtues and also in those cardinal virtues. And then I need to, in this process, intentionally learning myself and changing my behavior, I need to then intentionally go and see who can I disciple and teach and learn. My children, start at home, and then be, if you don't have children yet, your best friend, your wife, your husband. Who can I then encourage to walk also in this manner? So what is discipleship not? It's not an information transfer. I am giving you information now. It is not your pastor just giving a sermon. That's not discipleship. But it is if you walk a road with those people and share these truths for them to come to know and understand, for them to then be living in that way and to do accordingly. That is. So it's not just me giving information. So I'm not discipling you now. I'm teaching you, but I'm not discipling you. Discipleship is not simply reading the Bible. For me to just give you the Bible and say, there you go, read the Bible, that's not discipleship. So principles of mentoring, so being a disciple maker. So you have heard the truth, I've been set free, I'm living in a lifestyle, I'm changing, I'm in this process of transformation, being made holy, sanctification. And then I need to not keep it just for myself, love others and go and disciple others as well. So every believer walking in obedience is a disciple and a potential disciple maker. Because we said discipling is intentional, so you have to think about it and then go and do it. A disciple is a believer who's being conformed to the image of Christ. I need to be a true believer, a God-fearing believer. I like Dr. Ray Shervo. He's saying a God-fearing Christian, not just a Christian. You must live as a disciple before you can be a disciple maker. Because if I say to you, you must be godly and have temperance, and then I don't, it's like, can I really trust what you're saying? Disciples must be equipped and demonstrate proficiency in 8 key areas. So if you are intentional, this is the 8 areas that you want to develop or help people to be developed in. And self-disciples grow in their communities to grow others who cannot self-disciple. I spoke to John about self-disciple. Some of us don't have the privilege of being in a faithful community or fellowship of believers that has this training, but God is working in their lives. God spoke. They had trainings online or in books that John has said, and then the change comes, but then they go into a community and they can be disciple makers as well. I had the privilege of going to Bible college. I was discipled within the Bible college, and therefore it was for me, I didn't self-disciple. I think the Lord knows who can do it on their own. I'm definitely a team member. Engaging this process, discipleship, Relationships should be challenging to begin with and easy to end. I want you to see is that we don't disciple forever. Jesus didn't stay with his disciples. He left. He said, now you're ready. Off you go. You go and do it. If you are mentoring somebody as a disciple maker and you stay with them too long and you stay and stay and stay, then you have a Messiah complex. Then you want to save them and you want to be the important one. Then it's about you again. So it must be hard at the beginning. Is that the beginning is like, okay, Lord, I see this person and I want to disciple them, and then they must agree upon it. So you build a relationship, have these conversations, and then there's like, can I help you? Can I guide you? And yes, then it's discipleship. Advice is also not to do it in one-on-one, but they have, and I like this, disciple only as many people as you can effectively pray for. So have a look. You must pray for that person or those persons on a daily basis. Mentor in a holistic relationship that is critical to the process of making disciple makers. It's not just about reading the Bible. It's about all these philosophies, all these 8 areas that I'm going to show you now. Making disciple makers involves principle of interpersonal communication. John has got a course, Virtuous Communication, is we need to learn how to communicate. Many of our conflicts are based on the fact that we don't know how to communicate. Reproductive discipleship follows a model of 2 Timothy 2 verse 2, where Paul writes to Timothy, teach others also. Paul is saying, I taught you, now you go and teach them. Disciple making has an end in which the disciple maker is launched and the process begins again on both parties. So if your disciple is launched, you start over again and have an intention. So developing this disciple is dance with those who are ready to dance, wait with someone only as far as they are willing to go. Disciples should evaluate regularly, so check them. How are you doing? And then disciples must be tested. See if they are challenged, how do they respond? If prudence or patience is one of the virtues that they have to grow in. And then evangelism may be practiced before disciple is launched. And Dr. Ray also said, as soon as a believer comes to faith, they must be caged first. Because otherwise they go out and they evangelize and they say things and do things and they're like, you better turn or burn. And you're like, oh, no, come back, let's train you. So, yeah, it is the same. Disciples should wait to make disciple makers until they display a certain level of maturity. So, an acronym that you can use is FOLLOW. Focus on being virtuous before doing discipleship. Make sure your heart is circumcised and you are a disciple and you can set the example. Observe behavior. So be vigilant. Have a look at people's behavior. Learn to listen. Learn to serve. Offer to mentor and walk with them. So we see in college, we have coaches and we don't give them salaries because we want them to come and serve first, because that is one of the, if you have a look, before you can be a disciple maker, as a disciple, do you know what it means to listen, to learn, to serve, and to offer then mentorship and walk with them? So walking with a disciple as a mentor, the first step, those 8 points, just for time's sake, I'm going to go through this quickly. We need to look at what is salvation. The second step is we need to look at what is sanctification. So that is being made pure and holy, or the virtues. How do we grow in that? Third step is spiritual discipline. You will be surprised. When I started Bible college, my worst nightmare was if somebody say, will you please pray for us out loud? We need to disciple people to be able and teach them what does it mean to pray? What is prayer? What is fellowship? What is confession? And what is fasting? So we need to teach them that. And then the fourth is development skills in hermeneutics, how to read the Bible. There is a skill involved. It is not just open the Bible and take a verse and then apply directly, because then, number one, I should wear a hat, and number two, I should not be standing here. Okay. Then, first step is learn theology. You need to go and study God's word and understand who God is. Can you remember last night I said, so many say, don't do, or I've heard pastors say you don't need to do theology. I'm like, no. Learn theology. You need to know who God is, what's his essence, his character. And then do apologetics, learn how to do apologetics, train people, train that disciple that you're making in that. Train him in evangelism. I couldn't evangelize the Muslim that wanted to evangelize me to Islam. So we need to train people, teach them how to, and then teach them how to disciple. That's the 8th step. Now I'm going to show you a video. Before we play that video, it's a father. You're going to see, but I want you to have a look at his intentions. We said discipleship is intentional, and it's making a commitment to those few people, to disciple them.
Then, appearing near the start line, where they've been before, are father and son, Dick and Ricky Hoyer. There is no one here who hasn't heard about them, their story, and a human commitment that goes far beyond and far back.
January 10th, 1962. We knew there was something wrong, but we did not know exactly what. The doctor said, forget Rick. Put him away, put him in an institution. He's going to be nothing but a vegetable for the rest of his life. We cried a little bit. We talked, and we said, no, we're not going to put Rick away. We're going to bring Rick home and bring him up like any other child. We knew Rick was smart. We could tell by looking in his eyes. And when we talked to him, he was paying attention to what we were saying. So we wanted to get a computer built so Rick could communicate with us. Everybody came to our house that night for Rick to say his first words, and everybody was betting, what is the first words Rick is ever going to say? His mom saying, it's going to be, hi, Mom, and me, the dad, saying, no, it's going to be, hi, Dad. Well, the Boston Bruins were going for the Stanley Cup, and the very first words Rick ever said was, go Bruins.
Dick is a military man, so he knows a thing or two about commitment. This time, he's just months removed from a heart attack. This gift that he gives to his son, or is it the other way around? Either way, it all started when Rick heard about a charity run for a paralyzed athlete. He asked Dad, and Dad said yes.
The gun went off, and we went off with all the other runners, and everybody thought that Rick and I would just go to the corner and turn around and come back. Well, we didn't. We finished the whole 5 miles, coming in next to last, but not last. And when we got home that night, Rick wrote on his computer, Dad, when I'm running, it feels like my disability disappears. So that was a very powerful message to me, that we finally found a sport that Rick could get involved in just like everybody else. Rick is my motivator. He inspires me. To me, he's the one out there competing, and I'm just loaning him my arms and my legs so that he can compete. There's just something that gets into me when I'm out there competing with Rick that I can't explain it, and we're able to go faster. And it's just an unbelievable feeling. Rick and I love the Ironman triathlon, to be out there competing with the best triathletes in the world, to be accepted to compete along with these triathletes. Just to be out there on that pier with all the other triathletes and then waiting in the water for that cannon to go off, it was just so exciting. The feeling coming down the finish line at Leahy Drive, it's just an awesome experience. With the crowd there, all the excitement, the noise, and the announcers announcing, all that, your adrenaline just gets flowing.
I may be disabled, but I live a very fulfilling life. And if someone takes the time to get to know me, they will realize that I am no different than anyone else.
here he is. He graduated from public high school. He's graduated from college. He's out there competing in road races and triathlons. He lives a happier life probably than 95% of the population. Rick would tell you that, if he was physically able to do something, that he'd probably play basketball or football or hockey. But then he always says, no, the first thing he'd do is have me sit down in his wheelchair and he'd push me. It really makes me feel good that he appreciates, what I'm trying to do to help him out, and he'd do the same thing for me. Our message is, yes, you can. You can do anything you want to do as long as you make up your mind. You can do it.
If you have ever searched for the meaning of life, stop. The answer lies right here. By the way, Ricky would want us to tell you the Bruins look pretty good this year.
So if you have a look at this, his intention, there was a battle. There was a battle. We are warriors. They say he's a warrior. We are warriors. There's a battle of the mind. And we need to be intentional in our commitment. There were people who was willing to disciple me. And because of that, I have the desire to honor God and therefore to disciple others. And that's one of the reasons why I'm standing here. And if you have a look, is that we have a witness. We have an amazing story to tell. And that story is not fiction, it's the truth. And that should motivate us to get up. And then we're not alone. We have fellow believers that knows and that will disciple us, and we can then work together and disciple others. Can we go out and be intentional to give the outcast a home, the broken a safe place, that they can ask questions to get the true answers? Give them the opportunity to be a partaker in a race that has, like you said, it's a lifelong, it is eternal consequences, whatever we discuss, not the academics, not the cultural or the sports activities that our children are doing or we are doing. What has got eternal consequences? Can we go and be examples? And this example we have seen in our Redeemer. I have been redeemed by a Redeemer. And then we're going to play this last song, and I want you to have a look and just be reminded yet again as Joshua walked through to the promised land with God's people, and they built an altar with rocks, and God said, build that so that my people will remember, and you will be able to tell your children to follow, generations to follow. So as I'm calling you last night and today, to remember your Redeemer, and may that be the motivator, may He be your motivator to go and be a disciple maker.